that goal setting is a very natural process. We do it all the time. We do it anyway. You know, if you look back on something that you achieved, and this is an activity I run people through in seminars, if you look back at an activity or some experience or anything you've achieved, and if you write that achievement down on the top of a piece of paper, and then under that piece of paper, you simply make a list of the bigger items, the bigger issues, or the bigger projects it took in order to achieve that particular goal. Essentially, what you'll do in that activity is make a reverse project plan, right? You've got the outcome, and then you've got the steps that it took to get to that outcome. If you turn that and push that into the future, well, all of a sudden you have a future project plan. So on the top of the piece of paper, you put down what you're going to achieve, and below that you make a list of the bigger issues, projects, circumstances, the bigger things it's going to take to get there, and before you know it, you've got a to-do list, really. You've got a achievement list by milestones. So again, all the themes that we're talking about have to do with this concept of carrying out your promises, making good on your commitments. And I'd like to remind people that my definition of productivity has always been doing what I said I would do in the time that I promised. So this idea of lining things up so that where I'm sitting here and as I'm moving toward that new place, that new space, that new time, I have things lined up. I'm carrying out, I'm accomplishing what it is that I said I would do. When I think about goal, the word goal, you know, I took out my journal one day and I just wrote that word down, and then I wrote the word goal down the piece of paper. So G, and then below that O, and then below that A, and then below that L. And a lot of words showed up, words that started with G and O and A and L. But the one that I'm kind of stuck on these days is goal, to me, stands for get objective achievements listed. So when I get that objective achievement listed, what is it that I'm going to do? Not subjectively, not, oh, this is what I think I'm going to do, or this is what I think it would look like. No, it's very specific. It's very measurable. It's action-oriented. It's something that's real to me. It's something that is time-bound. It's got a due date. It's got a specific thing that I'm going to have accomplished by a specific time. And again, whether I'm thinking about my personal life or my professional life, it's an interesting exercise because by writing something down, and by the way, this is one reason that some people that we work with avoid writing things down, but watch this. By writing something down that you're going to accomplish, that you're going to achieve, you actually stress the system. You add stress to the system. In fact, writing something down that's not true can be a very significant stressor. It can cause the system to engage. It can cause your mind to engage. Now, the caution flag goes up here because what you don't want to do is stress yourself out so much by everything you're not doing that you become paralyzed. There's the stress of goal setting. That is the good stress, the acute stress, say of a looming deadline. You know and I know that when something is due and there's 24 and then 12 and then 6 and then 3 hours before that thing's going to take place, or before you have to send it away in the mail, or before that test is coming down where you actually sit and go through the material. It's important to remember the stress of a deadline or the stress of a goal actually engages the system. You know, I'm a member of the Dana Alliance out of Washington, D.C. They're a think tank, if you will, and one of the books that they just sent me is called Your Brain at Work. And one of the things that stood out to me about this, and I was reading the section on stress and workplace performance and productivity, work-life balance, one of the things that stood out to me was this quote. It says, "Deal with situations directly by focusing on finding a solution." And what happened is that kind of shifted, it kind of changed what my focus was as I was moving into and through that whole goal setting process. You know, it's one thing to think about everything that I have to do. It's a whole nother thing to step back, and focus on a solution. an action, a single step that I can take that kind of moves me through into that. So what I'd like to do is over the next 4 or 5 months, I think that would be a good time frame for you to think of here, is to pull out a piece of paper, and I'll make this guide available to anybody who just emails in. I call it the promise guide, the focus guide. And what we do is we come up with 2 or 3 what I call real promises. What are you really committing to doing? Not all the work that you normally have to do in the day-to-day busyness of life, right? That's called running the business, or as one of our clients calls it, RTB. You got to answer the phone, you got to go to meetings, you got to reply to emails, you got to go to parties, you got to do those certain things. But I'm going to ask you to pick 2, maximum 3 things that over the next 4 or 5 months you're going to see significant improvement around or on. And so maybe you consider, 2 or 3 areas of your life. There's your physical life, your financial life, your professional life, your relationship life, your whatever that is. And come up with, again, 2 or 3 very real commitments, real promises. Here's what you are agreeing to yourself that you're going to manage between now and, let's just say, the next 4 or 5 months. Now, next to that or under that, for each one of those promises, what we'll encourage you to do is to write down some specific objectives, milestones, some markers. Again, one of our clients calls these gates. And as you pass through each gate, you get to a new era, you get to a new place, you get to a new achievement, all leading toward that real promise achievement. And so some examples of this that I can give you, and right now I'm working with 3 of these. With a co-author, I'm working on getting a book published. I'm working toward a strong finish at the New York City Triathlon. And we're developing what we're calling the Coach's Corner e-learning and productivity suite. Okay? So these are the 3 things that I'm really focusing on between now and the next 4 or 5 months. And when I sit down to plan out my week, or when I sit down to prioritize what it is that I need to be doing in the near term, I'm pushing all my priorities, I'm pushing all my options through these 3 promises. How does this line up with getting the book published, getting me toward a strong finish in the triathlon, or building that online productivity education suite? And what's fascinating is all I did from there is I made up some objectives, some milestones that were very achievable in the shorter term, right? Where getting the book published might be a 18 to 24 month process. In the near term, I can put out some bids to at least 3 printers. I can submit a draft to an editor for a review. I'm building a 1-sheet proposal, and we've been sending that out to different publishers. So there's these little things that I can do in between, knowing that that real promise, that publishing the book is where I'm headed toward. So at the end of this call, or sometime today or tomorrow, I'll really encourage you to sit down and write down for yourself what are 2 or 3 real promises. And then underneath or off to the side of that, what are some specific objectives? If someone asks me, Jason, how many objectives should I have for each goal? My feedback would be go for 4, maybe 6. And what'll wind up happening is every month, every 3 to 5 weeks, you'll need to re-up or you'll need to renegotiate what those smaller milestones or objectives were, because by that time you'll probably have achieved on several of those. Again, the overall promise, that could take anywhere from 4 or 5 months, even more. But those objective milestones and those achievements, you're going to be checking those off the list with much more frequency, if you will. I've got a question. After going through this first 15, 16 minutes of the teleseminar, what does goal setting and focusing on what you want mean to you? What is